Hello and welcome to the Spotlight on Food and Health Communications, your number one go-to media source for credible and timely health information. Victor Wabery is my name. Today, the Spotlight is on trauma, 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 and we're going to be having a series on this very trauma topic. Today is going to be the first series. The next series is going to come to you on Thursday. Let's start off very quickly. When we talk about trauma, what do we mean? We understand that according to the American Psychological Association, trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. However, a person may experience trauma as a response to an event that they find physically or emotionally threatening or harmful. A traumatized person can feel a range of emotions both immediately after the event and in the long term. They may feel overwhelmed, helpless, shocked, or have difficulty processing their experiences. Now, trauma can also cause physical symptoms. Trauma can have long-term effects on the person's well-being, and if symptoms persist and do not decrease in severity, it can indicate that the trauma has developed into a mental health disorder called post-traumatic stress disorder, otherwise known as PTSD. Now, I need you to understand that there are several types of trauma, including number one, acute trauma. This results from a single stressful or dangerous event. We also have the chronic trauma. This results from repeated and prolonged exposure to highly stressful events. Examples include cases of child abuse, cases of bullying, or domestic violence. We also have complex trauma. This results from exposure to multiple traumatic events. We also have secondary trauma or vicarious trauma. This is another form of trauma. With this form of trauma, a person develops trauma symptoms for close contact with someone who has experienced a traumatic event. Family members, mental health professionals, and others who care for those who have experienced a traumatic event are at risk of vicarious trauma. The symptoms often mirror those of PTSD. Now, let's very quickly look at some of the symptoms that are attached to trauma. The symptoms of trauma range from mild to severe. Many factors determine how a traumatic event affects a person, including their characteristics, the presence of other mental health conditions, previous exposure to traumatic events, the type and characteristics of the events or events, their background and approach to handling emotions. Now let's start off with emotional and psychological responses. A person who has experienced trauma may feel number one, denial, number two, anger, number three, fear, sadness, shame, confusion, anxiety, depression, or even numbness, and it goes into guilt, to hopelessness, to irritability, and to difficulty in concentrating. They may have emotional outbursts and find it difficult to cope with how they feel or withdraw from others. Now, flashbacks where a person relieves the traumatic events in their mind are common, as are nightmares. Now let's look at the physical responses. Along with an emotional reaction, trauma can cause physical symptoms such as headaches, such as digestive symptoms, such as fatigue, racing heart, sweating, and even feeling jumpy. Sometimes a person will also experience hyperarousal, or when someone feel as though they are in a constant state of alertness. This may make it difficult to sleep. Now, individuals may also go on to develop other mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, and substance abuse problems. Traumatic experiences. Let's talk about the traumatic experiences. Now, I want to say this, that some research estimates that 60 to 75% of people in North America experience a traumatic event at some point. The charity Mind in the United Kingdom lists the following as potential causes of trauma. They listed bullying, harassment, physical, psychological, or sexual abuse, sexual assault, traffic collisions, childbirth, life-threatening illness, sudden loss of a loved one, being attacked, being kidnapped, acts of terrorism, natural disasters, and finally, war. Now, traumatic events can be isolated or repeated ongoing events. And a person can also experience trauma after witnessing something traumatic happening to someone else. It's possible because people have different reactions to traumatic events. For example, those who live through the same natural disaster can respond very differently despite experiencing the same events. Now let's talk about the PTSD, which is the second form. PTS sorry Now let's talk about PTSD. PTSD develops when the symptoms of trauma persist or get worse in the weeks and months after the stressful event. Now PTSD is distressing and interferes with a person's daily life and relationships. Symptoms include severe anxiety, flashbacks, and persistent memories of the events. Another symptom of PTSD is avoidance behaviors. If a person tries to avoid thinking about the traumatic event, visiting the place where it occurred, or avoiding its triggers, it can be a sign of PTSD. Now, PTSD may last for years, although treatment can help people to manage their symptoms and improve their quality of life. Now, let's talk about the risk factors for developing PTSD, and this include previous trauma, physical pain or injury, having little support after the trauma, dealing with all the stresses at the same time, such as financial difficulty, and finally, previous anxiety or depression. And I need you to know that most people who experience a traumatic event do not develop PTSD, as we understand that the National Institute of Mental Health estimates that the lifetime prevalence of PTSD in the United States is 6.8%. The next big question someone might be asking is there trauma in childhood? Do children go ahead to experience trauma? The answer is yes, and I'll talk about it, and I'll take the conversation from that point in the next series. And this is where we let down the anchors on this series. See you in the next series. My name is Victor Waberry. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos, and leave your thoughts, suggestion, whatever it is, in the comment section below. Till I come your way in the next series, keep staying safe.